Chapter 25. The Last Night. If the factions can unite, I believe we'll be able to escape this dying world. Circa 6 days, 12 hours, from the forging of the Remnant. Estingai smiled as she approached the suite she shared with Karuxi and Duchantu. The stale, processed scent of their rations and the joy of their laughter drifted out into the hall. She ducked through the curtain, making sure she didn't drop any of her burden, though a few of the plates slipped against what she wore. Her brother and sister looked up as she entered, smiling. When they saw what she carried, what she wore, their eyes went wide, and they rose from their stone seats. "This is what I've spent so much time on in the workshop the past week," she told them, carefully setting the pieces down on the table. Estingai was busier than ever integrating the factions and working things out with the other leaders. But she'd spent every spare moment, some of which she probably should have been sleeping during, shut away in the workshop, modifying and repairing the armor she'd taken off the Lightforged. She'd decided this would be her final project. "These are for you," she said, handing the greaves and sabaton to Karuxi. "They are light enough that I can move around easily with them on, but if the biogems run out, you'll need your grey nodes to move in them. I made a few upgrades as well." A few of the shipping containers they'd retrieved from Diedu had contained crates of georural technology, and Estingai had found a few that she'd been able to modify to suit her purposes. Karuxi grinned as he took the 2 leg harnesses, looking them over. Estingai took the arm harnesses and handed them to Uchantu. "These should work well with your fighting style," she said. "I modified the bracers to project hardlight shields if you press on one of the plates in the gauntlets, among other things." Estingai didn't know why the Amaya hadn't thought to add something like that. They probably think the Lightforged are so unstoppable they don't need any special tricks. Uchantu beamed as she took the pieces of armor. "The gauntlets transfer sensation too. I did some of the work on Karuxi's pieces with them on." Uchantu's eyes sparkled, a wide grin splitting her face as she looked them over. "And those are yours, I'm assuming?" Karuxi asked, gesturing to the armor she wore. Estingai had taken the cuirass and tassets for herself, supplementing them with her old armor to cover her arms and legs. She hadn't decided exactly what to do with the helmet yet. "If everyone is going to see me as the last knight, I might as well look the part." Karuxi snorted, grinning. "I think that does it. Is it comfortable at least?" Estingai raised an eyebrow, then sat down on the stone bench before the table. The armor clinked, and she was aware of its weight, but it wasn't too bad. Nodding in appreciation, Karuxi handed her a ration bar they'd set out for her. Estingai shot him a half smile in thanks, then opened the resealable package and took out the bar, biting into it. She frowned. "The Amaya really needs to send a chef to Darkside, along with 3 or 4 cars full of ingredients for top-shelf dining." Karuxi and Estingai smiled in agreement. Estingai wet her lips, hesitating before her next bite, then took it, half shaking her head. She needed to ask something of them, but for now she would just enjoy some time alone with her brother and sister. They ate and talked for a while, Uchantu and Karuxi joking back and forth. Estingai joined in a few times, teasing Karuxi about Pais. They made her smile, nearly breaking her resolve. "No, you need to do this. They're the only ones you can trust." Estingai swallowed the last of her ration bar, washing it down from a few sips of the water bottle at her waist. She was about to get their attention when Karuxi turned to her. "Did you get a chance to look at the fighter Adendo stole? The one Uchantu flew in on?" Uchantu shivered, making a face. "Please don't remind me of that. I'm still trying to convince myself that was just a nightmare." Estingai half smirked at Uchantu, but shook her head at Karuxi. "No. Why?" "Apparently it's one of the newer models. Trident, or something like that. Named for the shape. Typical Amaya creativity. It's powered completely by a palladium reactor, and the Amaya apparently did something to the dark light georourals that can contain the radiation, so that it's more efficient. We can use it for test flights, and it goes really fast. Edendo asked if you'd like to fly it. I know you haven't really had the chance in a while. Estingai's throat felt thick, even after she swallowed a few times. It was everything she'd ever wanted. To race through the sky untethered, to soar like the legendary Dracon. But I can't. Her eyes were hot and her heart heavy as she glanced back to her solitary bunk. She held back the tears, shaking her head as she looked again to Garuxi. Tell him I appreciate the offer, but no thank you. Garuxi and Uchantu shared a look, then fixed their gazes on her. Expressions wary. What's going on? Garuxi asked. Estingai took a deep, shuddering breath. You must have heard how poorly I dealt with things while you were gone, she said to Garuxi, then nodded to Uchantu. You saw firsthand. I was splitting myself in too many directions when I needed to focus. I need that focus even more now. Pais, Meka, Uldina, and Mehele are taking over the day-to-day workings of the Remnant. She smiled a bit at saying that. They finally were the Remnant. But I have to be the one that holds them all together, Estingai continued. I need to give us direction, to work on the bigger picture, while they keep things going and occasionally step in if they have any problems. I can't just worry about the next mission, or you two, or even just Frozen Phantom and Wolfden, and... She took a deep breath. With all the importance everyone places on me being the last knight, I can't take unnecessary risks like flying around on a joyride, no matter how much I want to. I won't shut myself away, but I need to be careful. Estingai paused, looking between Uchantu and Garuxi. They frowned, but she could see that they understood. There are a few things I'll need your help with. The first is Svemaku's plan. I told you the basics, and gave the leadership and everyone else a general idea, but I never told you the details, or what I've worked out since then. Since finding his notes. Her brother and sister leaned in. Svemaku's plan was to shoot down an Amaya cruiser, a Dracon class, if possible. Once we have that, we salvage it, using Remnant 1's hangar to rebuild it. They decided Last Shadow's base was the most secure, and should be the Remnant's main base. Estingai and her family would be leaving this suite behind soon. We don't have as much as I would have liked, but the mining equipment we managed to steal from Memfoso will help with enlarging the cavern and its opening to fit the cruiser and eventually get it out. Once we're in the final phase, we should also be able to use their power cores to supplement anything we're missing on fighters or the cruiser. The fighters and ammunition you stole from Diedu will help, as will the anti-air artillery, though we may need a few more of those. What's our timetable? Garuxi asked. Estingai frowned. I want to wait a few months before we do anything after the attention we drew at Diedu. We need to stretch what we got from that as far as we can to make the Amaya think we've gone to ground, or ideally started fighting amongst ourselves as Kitai tried to achieve. After that, we start raiding again. Lightning strikes with as little breaks in between as possible. We need to provoke them into sending a cruiser out here. She looked to Uchantu. I'll be asking a lot of your team. They can take it. They'll have to. And if they send a Lightforged instead? Garuxi asked. That's where we come in, Estingai said. You have your blue notes. She gestured to Uchantu's arm harnesses and pulled out a small, modified dagger from her belt, holding it so they could see. I made this and modified Uchantu's gauntlets so they could act as siphons if we encounter one. I'm going to hope that if we use enough fighters on our raids, the Amaya will send air support rather than a Lightforged. As far as we know, they can't fly. I think I shivered at the thought. Once we accomplish that, we really disappear, raiding only when needed. Hopefully we'll have enough supplies stocked up from provoking the Amaya to last us. I want them thinking they broke us when they send the cruiser. We'll need to devote everything we can to getting the cruiser operational as fast as possible, since we have no idea when the Amaya plans on leaving. I'll try to keep track of that through our informant, but even then, who knows how much the Amaya will share with their people? After she was silent for a moment, Uchanto and Karuxi shared a look, then nodded at Estingai. We'll do whatever you need, Karuxi said. Ideally working together if we can. Estingai smiled at that. Of course, you two usually work better together anyway. She took a deep breath. There is something else. Something only you two can help with. For now, at least. Estingai looked between them, hesitating. I ran into Navisi. Their eyes went wide. When? Karuxi's voice was tight. When everyone was unloading the supplies in Remnant 1, I followed her and she cornered me. Estingai took a deep breath, still shaken by what the woman had asked of her. She found Queshrima, found the throne. She needs our help. Uchanto frowned. What kind of help? Karuxi asked. We need to hide her. She can help us hide in return. Navisi said something is wrong with her. She was weakened after the destruction. But apparently she should have started to regain her power by now. And she hasn't, Karuxi said. Estingai shook her head. Apparently not. Navisi wants us to shelter her, then take her with us when we leave Ephraimani. Queshrima is weak, but she should still have enough power to help us escape and find somewhere beyond the Amaya's reach. Estingai paused. This next part, she still didn't entirely believe. Apparently, Queshrima saw something when she destroyed Irmunthal, he forced out. Something of the future. Navisi says she may be able to guide us, that there are things she'll want us to know. Karuxi snorted. We saw how well that worked out last time. How can we even trust her sanity? Estingai shrugged. I don't know that we can. I got the feeling Navisi might not even trust her that much, but she said that hiding her, at least, is important, and in our best interests. Karuxi and Uchanto were silent. Estingai let them think. Would this be a secret from everyone? Uchanto asked. Estingai shook her head. The leadership would know. As far as everyone else, I think it would cause too much trouble. She took a deep breath, meeting both their eyes. I know this is a lot to ask. Karuxi shook his head and reached out to take her hand. If you think we should, then we'll do it. We're family, and, well, you're the only one that's actually met and spoken to Queshrima, besides Navisi, Matsanga, and Phantom. We've lost a lot, Uchanto said. We need to do whatever we can to make that worth it. If sheltering Queshrima helps, then we'll help you do it. Estingai beamed at them, eyes hot again. There was one last thing, but no, this is the most important. You have to tell them. Estingai? She took a deep breath. There's something else. Something I haven't decided if anyone should know beyond you two. If it got out. What is it? Karuxi asked, squeezing her hand. Estingai looked at the two of them and steeled her resolve. She told them about that night, when the Death Knight had come to shatter the Remnant before it could take its first breath, when she had taken Svimaku from them. Uchantu's eyes widened as she raised a hand to her mouth, and Karuxi's knees gave out as he sat with a thud on the stone bench. Their horror steeled Estingai's resolve. As Estingai told them of the face she'd seen that night, the face of Cogitere, their mother, the woman who had been the best of them, who had faced down the God King himself, she made a promise. If nothing else, she would seek vengeance for those taken from her. She would destroy the god who had taken them and the mother who betrayed her. If she could not cling to hope, then she would let anger provide her fire. But Estingai hoped she could do better. She would do whatever it took to ensure Karuxi and Uchantu knew something of peace. Not just for Svemaku, but for her family and the whole of the Remnant. She would give up tinkering with georals and her dreams of soaring through the air and even to the stars. She would give up all distractions, no matter how much she loved them. As a knight, she was exceptional by default. She would push herself to be even more than that. She would carry the burdens of a goddess and the legacy of warriors far greater than herself. Because the Remnant needed her to. More importantly, her family needed her to. Even when Estingai wanted nothing more than to curl up into a ball and weep, or squeeze her eyes shut and escape the horrors of this ravaged world, she would resist. She would look to the love that burned inside her, to the need that pulled at her. She would remember all she owed to the family that took her in and gave her everything, though she still felt she didn't deserve it. She would make sure Karuxi and Uchantu escaped this world and lived to see a world untouched by war or the folly of gods. She would be a leader worthy of the Remnant, the watchful protector of all those who stood against the Amaya. Estingai looked to Uchantu and Karuxi. For those who didn't think they needed her protection, for her brother and her adopted sister, for her husband and all the others she had lost, she would lay down her life as they had laid down theirs. She would stop at nothing to prove herself worthy of their sacrifice. Estingai would become the last knight.